Ethan Drake is a 36-year-old man, about 190 centimeters tall, with an athletic build, short dark hair, and piercing blue-gray eyes that seem to scan those around him, looking for weak points in them. His face rarely expresses emotion, but his expression is firm, confident, as if he is used to always being in control of the situation. He only wears perfectly fitting, custom-made suits. Today, he is wearing dark blue brioni with thin silver lines, emphasizing his status. White shirt, perfectly ironed, white gold cufflinks with initials engraved on them. The subtle aroma of expensive perfume envelops him, leaving behind a light but noticeable trace. Profession. Ethan is the head of his own investment company, Drake Enterprises, which deals with financial strategies, acquisitions, and restructuring of large corporations. His company manages billions of dollars, and he himself is one of the top most influential people in Chicago. He built this empire from scratch without anyone's help and now stands at its pinnacle. In business circles, he is known as a cool, calculating strategist who never makes hasty decisions and always acts with impeccable precision. He does not tolerate incompetence and does not forgive mistakes. Behind his back, they call him the man without weaknesses in a whisper. Status. Single. He once believed in love, but now he doesn't. His heart is covered with armor. There is no place for feelings in his life, only control, calculation, and impeccable order. He has everything: money, power, respect, but at the same time he lives alone, in a luxurious apartment on the top floor of a skyscraper with panoramic windows overlooking the city shining with lights. There is no room for accidents in his world, only iron discipline and complete control. Ethan grew up in a home where love was unevenly distributed. Father, Henry Drake, was a man of strong principles. He believed that discipline was the key to success and never allowed himself to be weak in front of his sons. The world is cruel, and you either learn to be strong or you remain a nobody, he often told Ethan. He didn't scream or hit, but every word hit harder than the blow, making the boy strive to be better, stronger, smarter. In Henry Drake's eyes, the world was a battlefield, and his children were warriors who must learn to survive. He was softer with his younger brother Liam, not because Liam deserved it, but because Dorothy, their mother, always protected him. Liam was her light, her pride, her little treasure. Ethan felt like a stranger in this house. His mother never hugged him just like that, didn't praise him, didn't look at him with the same warmth that she gave to Liam. If he brought an A, she just nodded, but if Liam brought a B, she immediately declared it a feat. "You understand, Ethan, that it's more difficult for Liam than for you," she said when he asked why his younger brother was treated differently. "He is more sensitive, he needs support." But Ethan also needed support. Only I never received it. He was used to his successes being taken for granted, and Liam's slightest achievements being elevated to the rank of heroism. Sometimes he wondered, what was he doing wrong? Why does his mother see him only as a shadow, but Liam as her son? When Ethan was 10, he one day overheard his parents talking. Henry blamed Dorothy for being too soft on Liam and making him weak. In response, she was indignant. "He's still a child, Henry, and Ethan. Ethan can handle it anyway. He's strong. He doesn't need my care." Ethan stood in the darkness of the corridor, clenching his fists. It was the most painful realization of his life. His mother did not love him the way he wanted. She didn't need him. All he had was his father's approval, but it was not expressed in words or affection. Henry Drake's approval consisted of a nod of the head, a lack of criticism, and a rare but firm word: "Good job." Ethan clung to these moments as proof of his worth. One day, when he managed to assemble and repair a broken lawnmower engine alone, his father put a glass of lemonade in front of him and said, "You're a smart guy, the real Drake." It was only 3 words, but they meant more to Ethan than any mother's hug. Meanwhile, Liam lived a carefree life. He could be lazy, he could be capricious, but he always found protection in his mother. Any mistake was forgiven, any punishment was mitigated. If he ran away from class, Dorothy blamed the teachers. If he lost money, she gave him new ones. If he got into trouble, she did everything to get him out. Liam knew he was special and gradually got used to the fact that the world had to revolve around him. Ethan saw it differently. He realized early on that, in this world, no one would give him anything for nothing. He saw how his father valued only strength, and his mother only valued weakness. He realized that if he wanted to achieve something, he would have to go it alone. This is how Ethan learned to be self-sufficient. He wasn't looking for approval. He wasn't looking for love. He realized that in this world, he can only rely on himself. He also swore that one day his mother would regret that she always pushed him away. Ethan was growing up quickly. At the age of 13, he already clearly understood that his mother's love could not be earned, and his father's approval was a rare and stringy thing. But that didn't stop him. He became stronger, smarter, more resilient. He liked to play sports. Every morning he got up an hour earlier to run a few laps around the stadium, and after classes he went for additional training, either swimming or athletics. He could spend hours practicing his jumping technique and obstacle course, not paying attention to the pain in his muscles and the voices of his classmates who suggested that he sit back. In his studies, Ethan also did not look for easy ways. He sat in the library for a long time, understood complex formulas, and read additional literature on his own. For this, he regularly received excellent grades, as well as the respect of teachers and fellow students, who saw in him an example of determination and hard work. Ethan himself treated his achievements without unnecessary pride. He only knew that this was the only path that definitely depended only on himself. But at home, his victories did not cause any joy at all. On the contrary, they seemed to disturb the mother. Her tired voice sounded at every opportunity. "You don't have to be so cocky, Ethan. You act like you're better than everyone else." Ethan didn't answer. He knew there was no point in arguing. No matter how hard he tries, Dorothy will never tell him the words he would like to hear. She seemed to withdraw into herself every time she saw his next achievement, trying not to notice her son's efforts in any way. Sometimes he thought that it was not Ethan himself that irritated her, but the constant comparison that involuntarily arose between the brothers. Liam, on the contrary, clung to Dorothy's attention with all his might, trying to earn her affection and praise. He tried on different activities. He went to football, but quickly quit after the first unsuccessful game, signed up for the swimming section, but skipped training, citing fatigue. He tried to be an excellent student. He took up books, but left them aside as soon as he got bored. It was as if he lacked some kind of inner core, without which any success would be unattainable. He was weak, dependent, accustomed to the fact that his mother would always find an excuse for his failures and intervene in any situation. "Liam, you have to try harder," Dorothy said in a soft tone when he delivered another mediocre grade. "I know you have the ability, you just haven't found your way yet." She repeated this over and over again, assuring herself and those around her that Liam just needed time. But his path was never found. As soon as he encountered the first difficulty, he immediately lost all interest and closed in on himself. This did not stop the mother from defending Liam even in front of the teachers, arguing that the environment is too strict with him and that the boy is just going through a difficult period. Ethan looked at his brother with mixed feelings. On the one hand, he sympathized with the fact that Liam could not escape from his mother's care and find himself. Sometimes Ethan even tried to help him with his homework or invited him to run together, but the mother just looked at her eldest son reproachfully, as if reproaching, "You've already outshone everyone. Give Liam the opportunity to find himself." On the other hand, Ethan understood that the advice would not have helped him if not for his own desire to work. Without internal incentive, even the most detailed explanations and best support are useless. When Ethan turned 15, he achieved his first truly serious recognition. He won a gold medal at a regional steeplechase competition. The big awards ceremony took place in the school auditorium. Coaches and school directors made solemn speeches, presenting certificates and cups to the athletes. Ethan stood on stage, in a crowd of fellow medalists, feeling a pleasant shiver of pride. The audience applauded, the teachers smiled, classmates congratulated, but only the father came from the family, who only nodded, dryly saying, "Well done." The mother didn't even bother to show up, citing being busy. Ethan was not surprised and no longer offended. He was ready for any outcome. That same day, Liam broke his leg in a bad fall from his bike in the driveway. The whole family immediately rushed to the hospital to see him. Dorothy stroked his hair, whispering that he was her brave boy and that everything will be fine. Ethan, standing in the doorway, looked at this picture. In the depths of his soul, he felt that a little more and a wave of anger or envy would rise within him. But he wasn't angry or jealous. He simply realized that in this house he was on his own. His victories were never going to be much fun, and he had learned to live with that. Something inside him finally hardened. From that moment on, he stopped waiting for words of support or praise from his parents. He did not need them as urgently as before. He realized he was alone, and that suited him. After all, everything he achieved was only the result of his own labor. Ethan was his own mentor, his own motivator, and no one, neither the tired voice of his mother nor the cold indifference of his father, could no longer stop him. Henry Drake was never a man who spoke much. His words were always terse, but there was a sense of weight in them. He was stern, but deep down he loved his sons. He just didn't know how to show it correctly, especially Ethan. When Ethan was a teenager, he began to notice that his father was drawn to him. Pride was sometimes visible in his gaze, but he rarely voiced it. Instead, he gave his son advice that seemed strange. "Don't make the same mistakes I made, Ethan," he said one day as they stood in the garage, working on a car. "What mistakes, Dad?" Ethan asked, wiping his hands on a rag. Henry didn't answer immediately. He looked at the engine for a long time, as if he saw in it something more than just a mechanism. "I let others control my life," he finally said. "I thought I was doing the right thing, but in the end, it turned out that I was just obeying." Ethan didn't understand what his father was talking about. In his eyes, Henry was a strong, tough man who knew how the world worked. How could he obey anyone? But over time, Ethan began to notice how his mother suppressed his father. Dorothy always made decisions in the family, and Henry rarely objected. Her word was law. If she said something would be done this way, then that's how it happened. Ethan watched as his father obeyed, sometimes pursing his lips, sometimes just nodding tiredly. When Dorothy complained that Ethan was too arrogant or rebellious, Henry didn't defend him. He was silent. But when they were alone, he said, "You shouldn't let anyone control you, especially those who don't respect your strength." "Are you talking about Mom?" Ethan asked one day, giving his father a searching look. Henry just sighed and shook his head. "You will understand everything yourself when the time comes." But time passed, and Ethan still didn't understand. He couldn't see that his father was talking about his own chains, about your own fear, about a life not lived the way he wanted. He didn't see it until it was too late. When Ethan turned 18, he left his home without looking back. He entered one of the best universities in Chicago, receiving a partial scholarship, and covered the rest with money he earned himself. "I had to work a lot, first as a waiter in a small cafe, then as a night loader in a supermarket." He slept 4 to 5 hours a day, but did not complain. His father's voice sounded in his head, "You shouldn't let anyone control you." He studied economics and finance, striving for success that no one was going to give him. His classmates from wealthy families allowed themselves to live carelessly, go to clubs, and not worry about tomorrow. Ethan lived modestly, counting every dollar, but knew that at the end of the road, something more awaited him than just a diploma. Independence awaited him. All this time, Liam lived differently. He stayed at home, not trying to go anywhere. Study was boring for him, work was humiliating, responsibility was an alien concept. He spent his nights in clubs, surrounded by cheap women and slackers like himself. Alcohol, gambling, fast cars, all this became part of his life. He knew no need because his mother was always there to protect him from the consequences. When Liam once again lost his job due to his own irresponsibility, Dorothy said, "He just hasn't found himself yet, Ethan. He has everything ahead of him." When he was caught driving drunk, she settled the matter with lawyers. It was an accident. You know how unfair the police are. When Liam lost money at poker and came to her for help, she took hundreds of dollars out of the family account. Liam just found himself in a difficult situation, she repeated over and over again. Ethan listened to this with icy calm. He knew deep down that his mother would always protect Liam, no matter how low he fell. But he also knew that one day there would come a time when neither she nor anyone else would be able to cover for his brother. And that day was approaching. But Liam was not going to remain a failure in the eyes of others. He also wanted money, power, and respect. But he was not going to take the honest path. One day he met a man named Victor in a bar. He was a charismatic and dangerous guy who immediately knew who he was dealing with. Liam saw him as a successful man who had everything: money, connections, expensive cars, and a beautiful life. Victor did not miss the chance to take advantage of the guy's naivety. "Do you want to earn money quickly and a lot?" he asked, blowing out a ring of smoke. "Real money doesn't come from 9 to 5. Liam nodded eagerly. He was not interested in long and painful paths to success. He wanted everything at once. At first, these were small orders: hand over an envelope, pick up money, deliver something to someone. Then he realized he could do more. Victor introduced him to the right people, and Liam became part of the shadow business. He engaged in fraud, money laundering, and illegal schemes that brought in huge profits. He learned to pretend, lie, manipulate. Now he entered expensive clubs not as a loser, but as a man who had money. He could afford all those cars that he had previously only seen in other people's photographs. He felt like the master of life. The mother did not ask unnecessary questions. The main thing for her was to see that her son had finally found himself. She turned a blind eye to the details, was glad that he stopped asking her for money, and even sometimes brought expensive gifts. But Ethan understood everything immediately. He didn't believe that Liam suddenly changed dramatically and started earning honestly. They met a few years later in one of the restaurants, where Ethan invited his brother, wanting to understand how deep he was stuck in this swamp. "Liam, you understand how this will end, right?" Ethan asked, putting the menu aside. Liam grinned, leaned back in his chair, and took a sip of his whiskey. "I live, Ethan. Not like you. You work from morning to night, and I enjoy life. Which one of us is the fool?" Ethan looked at his brother with cold calm. "Let's see which of us will laugh last." Liam laughed, but there was something like worry in his eyes. Maybe because he knew that sooner or later Ethan would be right. By the age of 26, Ethan Drake had achieved what many of his peers only dreamed of. He worked at an investment company, quickly rising through the ranks. Where others saw risk, he saw opportunity. Where others doubted, he acted. His analytical mind and composure allowed him to outperform his competitors, and his reputation as a dedicated and ruthless professional attracted clients. He invested his first serious money in real estate. Ethan carefully chose a house not too luxurious, but stylish, with panoramic windows and views of the city. This was his space, his fortress. He furnished it to his liking, a minimum of unnecessary details, only functionality and convenience. This house symbolized his independence and proof that he achieved everything on his own. His life consisted of work, contracts, investments. He did not waste time on empty entertainment, did not seek close connections. Everything he had, he built himself, and did not allow anyone to interfere in his life. He focused on himself and his goals, knowing that the only person he could count on was himself. Liam was still Liam. He continued to lead a chaotic life, getting into trouble and wasting his days. His mother still protected him, justified his actions, and got him out of problems. Ethan didn't interfere. He had long ago decided that he would not save his brother and would not allow his failures to drag him down. One day, his mother called him, excited and nervous. "Liam needs help again, Ethan. You know he's not like you. He just got lost." "I have nothing to do with it," Ethan answered coldly. "This is his life. He made the choice himself." Dorothy exhaled irritably. "You have become so cruel. You don't even try to help him." "Because he doesn't want to be helped, Mom," he said calmly. I'm not going to pull him out of the hole over and over again into which he himself jumps. He hung up, feeling either regret or guilt. Liam wasn't his problem. Ethan wasn't looking for love. He was focused on work, deals, projects, and cared little about his personal life. However, fate decreed otherwise. They met late at night in a small 24-hour cafe on the outskirts of Chicago. Ethan stopped by there on his way home, wanting a strong black coffee to decompress after a long day. He didn't often go to places like this, preferring more secluded establishments, but that night he didn't care. Savannah stood behind the counter, wiping down cups. Tall, with a thin figure, but not fragile, there was a sense of endurance in her movements. Her hair was dark brown, gathered into a messy ponytail, with a couple of stray strands, which she tucked behind her ear with a nervous gesture. The face is angular, with high cheekbones and a straight, slightly upturned nose. Her eyes were deep, brown, and seemed even darker under the light of the dim cafe lamps. There was fatigue in them, but not hopelessness. More like patient acceptance. When he ordered, she didn't even look at him. She just nodded and asked, "Regular or double?" "Double," he answered, examining her. She nodded, placed the cup under the coffee machine, and crossed her arms over her chest, looking out the window. "Can't sleep?" she asked when the coffee was ready. "Work," he answered briefly, taking the cup. Savannah chuckled and shrugged. "Then you and I are alike. I also work, but I still don't have enough money." Her honesty hurt him. There was no self-pity in her voice, only a statement of fact. This was something new. "How long have you been working here?" he asked before realizing what he was saying. Savannah looked at him in surprise, but answered without a hint of embarrassment. Enough to understand that rich people never come to such places. "What if I'm not rich?" he asked, tilting his head to the side. She grinned, leaning on the counter and folding her arms over her chest. "Then I guess I just got lost." Ethan smiled and took a sip of his coffee, feeling the bitter taste wake him up after a long day. "Or I just decided to drink normal coffee." Savannah snorted. "This is not normal coffee. This is coffee for those who are too tired to understand the tastes." "So you understand tastes?" He raised an eyebrow. She shrugged. "I understand people. Their orders say more than they think." "And what does my order say about me?" Ethan put the cup on the counter, crossing his arms over his chest. Savannah looked at him searchingly, a slight smile tugging at her lips. "Double espresso. No sugar. You don't waste time on frills. All that matters to you is action. You work a lot, sleep little. Your life is probably strictly on schedule. And," she squinted, as if noticing something, "you're lonely." "Where does such confidence come from?" he asked, bowing his head slightly. "Lonely people come here at these hours. There is no hurry for them to get home." Ethan chuckled. She was right, but not completely. Or perhaps even too right. This short exchange was the beginning. In an ordinary cafe, among the smell of coffee and cheap pastries, Ethan met a woman who might change his life. Savannah was not the kind of woman who would immediately rush into the arms of a man, especially if that man clearly lived in another world. She saw that Ethan was not like the customers who usually wandered into her cafe. His suit, his confidence, the way he looked straight into the eyes. But then, that night, he seemed to her just a tired man who needed coffee. Their conversations became longer. Ethan came to the cafe more and more often, sometimes staying late, ordering not only coffee, but also the pie that Savannah recommended. They talked about nothing and everything at once, about work, about life, about the city that never sleeps. She talked about her childhood in a poor area, about how she works in two places in order to somehow get out of debt, about how she dreams of a better life, but doesn't know where to start. "Have you ever thought about what you would like to do?" Ethan once asked her, thoughtfully looking at her thin fingers, nervously fiddling with the edge of her apron. "Of course," she grinned. "I would like to open my own small cafe where everything would be different, where customers would be happy not only with the food, but also with the atmosphere." "What's stopping you?" he asked simply. She laughed, shaking her head. "Money, connections, time. Enough reasons." Ethan didn't answer. He knew those words were true, but he also knew that people who really want to get out always find a way. Over time, their meetings began to extend beyond the cafe. One day, Ethan offered to give her a ride after her shift, and after some hesitation, she agreed. They drove around the city at night, talking about life. Then there was a trip to the cinema, then a walk in the park. Everything happened naturally, without haste, without artificiality. But Savannah was not naive. She understood that this man lived in a world where she had no way, and yet something about him attracted her more than fear. "I don't want to be a rich guy's toy," she said one day directly, looking into his eyes. Ethan smiled. "And who do you want to be? Someone who chooses his life himself." He liked this answer. After that walk in the park, when the city was already shrouded in the silence of the night, Ethan offered to give Savannah a ride to his house. His words sounded less like concern for safety and more like a quiet invitation to continue communication in a more private setting. At first, Savannah felt some kind of internal barrier, but the warmth of his gaze and the sincerity of his voice dispelled all doubts. In Ethan's cozy living room, where the soft light of the table lamps created an intimate atmosphere, they continued talking about dreams, difficulties, and what made their hearts beat faster. Over a cup of tea, their conversation gradually turned into a silent understanding. Every word, every touch became more and more meaningful. And so, as silence filled the room, Ethan gently extended his hand, and their fingers met in tender contact. At first it was a timid touch, barely perceptible, like a promise of something new and surprising. But with every minute the tension between them grew. Kisses, quiet and uncertain at first, soon gained depth and passion, reflecting all those dreams about which they had been silent for so long. Savannah allowed herself to forget about the outside world, losing herself in the softness of his lips and the warmth of his hands. It was in this tenderness that she felt all fears and doubts disappear, giving way to a sincere desire to be understood and accepted. That night, not just physical attraction flared up between them, but a whole symphony of emotions and feelings. Ethan touched her skin with special care, as if studying every facet of it, and Savannah reciprocated, revealing to him not only her body, but also her soul. Every movement was filled with care and respect. They took their time, allowing time to slow down, so that every breath, every quiet moan became evidence of their unity. Under the soft blanket of the night, their bodies found a common language, where every touch conveyed warmth and tenderness, and every movement became a sign of trust. This was the first time that physical intimacy turned into the discovery of an entire inner world, where feelings hidden behind long years of struggle and loneliness finally found a voice. In this intimacy, they learned that being vulnerable is being strong, and love can awaken your deepest dreams. As the morning gradually began to disperse the darkness of the night, Savannah felt that she had become different, free, confident, and loved. Their first night was not just an act of passion, but a real ritual of mutual acceptance, where two people who came from different worlds found a common language full of tenderness, understanding, and endless warmth. It was in this magical moment that they realized that they could choose their life themselves, and together open a new page, where every touch is a step towards true, deep love. This is how their story began. Ethan never acted impulsively. He always calculated his steps and made decisions with a cold mind. But with Savannah, it was different. Their relationship developed gradually but steadily. He saw something in her that he didn't see in other women, not just beauty, but strength. She did not try to appear better than she was, did not hide her past, and did not adapt to it. She was real, and that attracted him. Savannah kept her distance at first. She didn't want to be a woman dependent on a man, even if that man could give her everything. But Ethan was not a man who asked or waited. He took what he wanted, confidently and without doubt. He didn't make empty promises, didn't shower her with gifts, didn't try to buy her love. Instead, he gave her stability, protection, and confidence in the future. "Do you understand what you're getting into?" she asked him one day when they were sitting on the roof of his house, watching the lights of the city at night. "I'm not getting involved. I make a choice," he answered, looking at her. Ethan didn't make proposals with pathos. It wasn't his style. One day at dinner, He simply took out a box with a ring and placed it on the table in front of her. "We'll get married," he said calmly. Savannah laughed. "You don't even ask if I agree?" He just smiled. "If you didn't agree, we wouldn't be sitting here." She looked at him and realized that he was right. Deep down, she knew it was inevitable. This man was not someone to be rejected. The wedding was small, without ostentatious glamour and crowds of guests. Just a narrow circle of close people, a strict but elegant ceremony. Ethan didn't like noisy events, and Savannah didn't want to pretend that she was part of a world she never belonged to. After the wedding, her life changed, but not in the way she expected. He didn't make her a housewife, didn't lock her in a golden cage. He gave her the resources, but left the choice to her. She could do what she wanted, but she no longer feared for the future. They were a couple, but not a couple in the classical sense. Their union was built not on romance, but on strength. He was her support, she was his equal. But not everyone liked it. Dorothy received the news of the wedding without delight. She disapproved of Savannah, considering her unworthy of the Drake family. In her eyes, Ethan should have found a woman from a wealthy family with a position, and not a girl from poor neighborhoods dreaming of a better life. She made snarky remarks and hinted that Ethan's marriage was doomed, but he didn't pay attention. "You never listen to me," she told him one day on the phone. "I just don't want you to repeat the mistakes that men make when they are blinded by women." "I repeat only my decisions, not other people's mistakes," he snapped. Liam was also unhappy. He did not hide his envy. It was unbearable for him to see that his brother, the one whom he had always despised for his dryness and detachment, was now married, had everything that he himself had never aspired to. "You always get what you want, right?" he said to Ethan on the eve of the wedding. "Lucky bastard." "It's not luck, Liam," Ethan replied coldly. "This is work." The only one who was sincerely happy for him was his father. Henry was not a man who expressed feelings, but when he shook his son's hand on his wedding day, there was approval in his eyes. "You chose your path," he said. "But remember, don't repeat my mistakes." These words were spoken again, but Ethan still did not fully understand their meaning. He didn't think he was making a mistake. He knew he made the right choice. And this time, no one could shake his confidence. The first time after the wedding, their life was impeccable. Ethan was not used to compromise, but with Savannah, he did not have to make concessions, she did not try to change him, and he did not put her in limits. They both knew what they wanted and went towards it together. Ethan was never one to talk about his feelings out loud, but his actions spoke for him. He made sure that Savannah never had to worry about money, but he never pushed her into inaction. He saw that she wanted more than just to be the wife of a wealthy man. She dreamed of her own cafe, and he helped make her dream come true. The cafe, which Savannah opened a year after the wedding, became her pride. It was cozy but stylish, with a pleasant atmosphere and delicious pastries. She put her whole soul into it, choosing the interior herself, creating the menu and recruiting staff. And Ethan, although he did not interfere, made sure that she had everything she needed: the best suppliers, competent lawyers, reliable partners. He didn't just give her a cafe, he gave her the opportunity to feel independent. Harmony reigned in their home. Savannah made it a warm, cozy place that was a pleasure to be in. In the evenings, they dined together, discussed the day, sometimes just sat silently next to each other, enjoying each other's company. They didn't need loud confessions or grand gestures, they just knew that they had each other. From the outside, their marriage seemed ideal. He really was like that. Ethan loved her, albeit not the way they love her in cheap novels, without tears, vows, and promises. His love was stability, protection, a willingness to support her dreams and do everything to make her feel safe. Their marriage was not only strong, but also filled with passion. Ethan had never been a person to talk about his emotions, but in bed he showed everything without words. Their nights were long, filled with primal passion, his imperious energy and its complete dedication. He loved to control, and she loved to obey, but only that much. In life they were equal, but in bed Savannah knew that she belonged only to him. "You know I like it when you resist. Just a little." His voice was low, almost a growl, as he pinned her arms above her head. "I know," she breathed, feeling his body pressing against her and his lips finding her neck. "But you still always win." He chuckled, running his lips over her skin. "Because you're mine." His teeth lightly bit into her shoulder, causing her to tremble. "Yes, yours." Her voice broke into a moan as he thrust into her harshly. He moved slowly, painfully, completely controlling her sensations. "Tell me what you want, Savannah." His voice was low, demanding. "You, only you." Her fingers dug into his back, and her breathing became ragged. "Good girl." His whisper was saturated with dark affection. They dissolved into each other, and at these moments nothing existed except their bodies, their breathing, their merging. Later, when they lay next to each other, breathing heavily, her body still remembered his touch. "We're in no hurry," Ethan said, lazily running his fingers along her bare back. "When the time comes, we will both understand it." Savannah smiled and snuggled closer to him. She knew that next to this man, she had a future in which she was not afraid to step forward. Ideal marriages only exist in fairy tales. Even Ethan and Savannah, who seemed inseparable, began to show the first cracks. These were not loud scandals or betrayals, but something gradually changed, as if an invisible shadow hung over their house. It all started with business. Savannah's cafe began to make a profit, but at the same time her responsibilities increased. She came home late, tired, often mentally remaining there in her establishment. Ethan, accustomed to control and order, felt that he was losing influence. He did not interfere with her work, but he did not like that now he was not the center of her attention. "You stayed up late again," he said one day when she returned home after midnight. "Work," she answered briefly, unbuttoning her coat. "You work more than you need to, because I want everything to work out." He nodded, but irritation was brewing inside him. He knew that this was her dream. He had supported her from the very beginning, but now their evenings, their conversations, even their passion had become rare. He spent more and more time alone, doing work or just sitting with a glass of whiskey in the living room, looking at the door and waiting for her to come. Sometimes he thought it would pass, that she just needed time to get things in order and everything would be the same again. But weeks turned into months, and the distance between them grew. They met less and less often in bed, and even when this happened, he felt that her thoughts were somewhere far away. The second problem came from where he didn't expect Liam. His brother got himself into trouble once again, this time owing a serious amount of money to the wrong people. And who, if not Ethan, was supposed to solve his problems? "He's your brother," Dorothy reminded him over the phone when he tried to refuse once again. "He's been on his own for a long time," Ethan answered coldly. "You can't just leave him. He needs help. He needs to finally take responsibility for his life," he said before turning off the phone. But Liam found another way to influence him through Savannah. One day, she spoke cautiously at dinner. "Liam needs help." Ethan set the glass of wine down on the table a little harder than necessary. "You don't understand who you're dealing with. He himself is to blame for everything that happens to him. But Ethan, he's your family." "Family?" He grinned. "Family is you. The rest have long ceased to exist for me." Savannah looked at him carefully. She was not used to seeing him so tough, so distant. "You really don't feel any responsibility for him?" "Not a bit," he replied, leaning back in his chair. "How many times was he given a chance? Do you think another one will make a difference?" This conversation was the first, but not the last. Liam knew how to put pressure on the right points, and Savannah, despite her strength, still believed that people can change. Every time she brought up the topic, there was tension between them that was impossible to ignore. In addition, Ethan began to notice other small changes. Savannah began to withdraw into herself more often and at times seemed distracted. When he asked what was wrong, she smiled and said that she was just tired. But he knew it wasn't just fatigue. Dorothy always knew how to influence people, and when she saw the first cracks begin to appear between Ethan and Savannah, she decided to take advantage of the moment. She and Savannah started spending more time together. It all started with harmless meetings, a cup of coffee after her shift in a cafe, leisurely walks through boutiques, discussion of fashion, home, life. "You work so hard, dear," Dorothy said with feigned concern as they looked through the windows of an upscale store. "Sometimes a woman should allow herself a little pleasure." Savannah laughed and shook her head at first, but then she began to enjoy the attention. Dorothy gave her compliments, praised her taste, said that she was now part of high society and should live up to it. Soon, ordinary meetings turned into trips to expensive boutiques. Savannah began spending money more often on things that previously seemed pointless to her. Designer dresses, jewelry, cosmetics. "You deserve the best, Savannah," Dorothy assured her. "You don't want to be perceived as just a rich man's wife. You must show that you are worthy of this status." Ethan began to notice changes. Savannah began to come home more and more often with full bags of branded items. She began to spend less time in the cafe, making excuses that she was tired or that the staff could cope without her. "Did you go with my mother again?" Ethan asked one day when he saw Savannah putting away her new purchases. "Yes," she answered casually, without even looking up at him. "We were just taking a walk." "Is it really that important?" "It matters if it starts to change you," he answered coldly. But Savannah didn't see this as a problem. She enjoyed the new way of life, the new sense of freedom that these trips gave her. She began to increasingly listen to Dorothy's words, her hints that Ethan was too controlling of her, that she needed more independence. At first it seemed like nothing, but the more she listened to Dorothy, the more she changed. "Will you stay with her again?" Ethan's voice was cold, almost colorless, but tension was felt deep down. Savannah, without looking at him, fastened the bracelet on her wrist in front of the mirror. Her dress was new, expensive, tailored according to the latest trends, and the smell of elite perfume filled the bedroom. She looked great, but Ethan wasn't happy about it. "Yes, my mother invited me to dinner, and then we might go to the club. It's too late to come back, so I'll spend the night with her," she replied, continuing to fix her hair. "Mother?" he asked with a grin, crossing his arms over his chest. "You didn't call her that before." Savannah sighed, finally turning to him. "She treats me well, Ethan. We found a common language. Why don't you like it so much?" "Because since you started spending time with her, you have changed." He took a step forward, his gaze was heavy. "You spend more time with her than with me. You only come home to change clothes. You don't even notice how far you've come." She snorted and rolled her eyes. "Don't be so dramatic. You act like I'm cheating on you or doing something terrible. You leave the house all night to drink champagne with my mother and her friends, and that doesn't count." He raised his voice. "Is this normal for a wife?" Savannah shrugged. "I'm just having fun, Ethan. You don't want me to be locked up, do you? I want you to behave like my wife and not like a socialite, which you have never been before," he said sharply. Savannah looked him up and down. "Maybe you're just jealous." Her voice was mocking. "You're used to me living only for you, and now that I have my own life, don't you like it?" "This is not life, this is escape," he answered harshly. "You hide behind these parties, behind my money, behind my mother, so as not to see what's happening between us." She sighed, irritably adjusting the clutch in her hands. "I'm not going to make excuses, Ethan. I feel good. Maybe you should relax a little." He wanted to say a lot, but he just clenched his jaw. He saw that she could no longer be convinced. She took the clutch and headed towards the exit. "Don't wait for me." Her voice was light, almost indifferent. When the door closed, Ethan was left standing alone, staring at the empty space in front of him. The house that was once filled with love and harmony now seemed cold and lifeless. He realized that he was losing her. He knew that if he did nothing, he would lose completely. Later that night, sitting in the dark living room with a glass of whiskey in his hand, he heard his phone vibrate. Message from a friend. "Saw your wife at a club. In the company of young guys. Are you sure everything is okay?" Ethan sat at the kitchen table, looking at his wife as she easily buttered her toast, as if nothing had happened. His mind was calm, but suspicion was seething inside. "How was your evening?" he asked, without looking up from his cup of coffee. Savannah glanced at him briefly and shrugged. Everything is as usual. Dinner with Mom, then some music and cocktails at the club. And what? He leaned back in his chair, thoughtfully tapping his fingers on the edge of the table. One of my friends happened to be there and said that he saw you in the company of some young guys. Savannah froze for a moment, but then just grinned as she took a sip of her orange juice. Oh, these are just friends of my mother. I don't really know them myself, just politeness. They joined our table for a few minutes. I don't understand why you even ask. Her voice was relaxed, but there was a slight shadow of irritation in it. Ethan looked at her carefully, looking for signs of lies, but found nothing. She looked confident, natural. There was no trembling in her voice, no worry in her eyes. He nodded, pretending to believe it. Okay, he said, rising from his chair. Just wanted to make sure. Savannah smiled, tilting her head to the side. You know I have nothing to hide, Ethan. He nodded again, but deep down something was bothering him. However, he did not develop the topic. Dorothy had always been good at manipulating people, and now her attention was focused on Savannah. She saw that Ethan remained cold, focused on control and order. He didn't give Savannah as much attention as she wanted, and her dreams of a bright life began to fade. But Dorothy knew how to play on it. Are you happy, dear? She asked one day as they sat in a cozy lounge, sipping sparkling wine. Savannah grinned, but a shadow of doubt flashed in her eyes. Of course, Dorothy. Why are you asking? Because you look different than before. Dorothy gently placed her hand on her wrist. You've become more reserved, as if you've lost a part of yourself. I just want you to know that you deserve better. More? Savannah asked, putting down her glass. I don't understand. Dorothy leaned forward slightly, her voice becoming quieter, almost conspiratorial. More emotions, more passion. You don't want to live your whole life in the shadows, do you? Ethan is a good husband, but does he give you what you really want? Don't you feel like he's moving away from you? Savannah didn't answer. The question stuck in her head, forcing her to reconsider everything she considered stable. Her thoughts returned to how rarely Ethan looked at her with interest now, how his life consisted of schedules and work and forecasts. When was the last time he said something to her that made her heart beat faster? The next day, Dorothy brought Liam to their company. He was the same as always, self-confident, slightly reckless, but there was an ease in his behavior that Ethan so lacked. He knew how to speak in such a way that his words seemed sincere. He laughed, threw out cheeky compliments, and skillfully fueled the fire inside a woman who was increasingly being left on the sidelines. You look amazing, he said to her at one of the meetings when he and Dorothy were drinking coffee. Thank you, Savannah replied, not knowing why her heart rate had quickened for a second. Liam didn't look at her the same way Ethan did. There was no usual coldness or calculation in his eyes. There was something else there. Light mockery, undisguised interest. It was dangerous, but worse, it was intriguing. Dorothy watched this, smiling with satisfaction. Later, when they were alone, she again carefully continued the conversation. Do you see? You are a young, beautiful woman, full of life. Don't you want to feel this more often? Savannah shook her head, unsure of how to respond. Liam is completely different from Ethan, isn't he? Dorothy continued. He lives in the moment, knows how to enjoy life. Perhaps you should get to know him better. But he's not serious, Savannah muttered. So what? Dorothy leaned closer, her voice sounding soft, almost motherly. He's just enjoying life. Relax. Let yourself feel. Is this a crime? Savannah didn't notice how Liam became a part of her daily life. It all started with little things. He appeared by chance, either in a cafe when she dropped in for a cup of coffee or in a boutique when she was choosing a dress. He always knew what to say, always noticed details that Ethan didn't notice. This dress emphasizes your waist, he remarked one day as she hesitantly twirled in front of the mirror. Do you think so? Savannah grinned, but for some reason her heart beat faster. Definitely. You have taste, but you need to please yourself more often, he added, lightly touching her elbow. She felt strange in his presence. Not like Ethan, who was predictable and controlled. Liam was different. There was lightness, ease, a little audacity in him. He spoke as if he knew her better than she did. Then there were parties. Dorothy invited them both more and more often, as if by chance leaving them alone. Liam was too attentive, too relaxed, too aware of how to make her smile. And most importantly, he did not demand anything from her. He was simply present, creating the feeling that she could breathe freely next to him. One day, he brought her home after another evening at the club. Ethan was on a business trip, and the house seemed too empty. Liam was in no hurry to leave. "Are you sure you want to be alone?" he asked, leaning against the door. She should have said yes. I had to step back and not let anything unnecessary into this fragile moment. But instead, she kept her gaze on him a little longer than she should have. "Will you come for tea?" She heard her voice. The tea was hot, but between them it became even hotter. Savannah sat opposite Liam in the dim kitchen, barely lit by the faint light of the lamp. Their conversation started easily: memories, dreams, unfulfilled plans. But gradually the topics became deeper and more personal. "You weren't always like this, were you?" he asked, looking at her carefully. "Which?" Savannah smiled, putting down her cup. "So, reserved. You used to have more fire, more life." Liam leaned forward a little, his voice deeper. "Did Ethan kill it for you?" Savannah tensed, her fingers tightening on the edge of the table. "No," she shook her head, but uncertainty flashed in her eyes. "Well, yes, of course," he chuckled, tilting his head to the side. "Look at you, Savannah. Do you look like a person who is happily married?" She sighed irritably, but remained silent. "Shit, even talking to you has gotten harder. Before, you were not afraid to express everything you thought. And now you're just protecting him. Although, tell me honestly, for what? Because it makes you empty." "Liam, shut up," she snapped, clenching her fists. "You don't know anything about my marriage." "Oh, believe me, I know enough." He smiled wryly. "That bastard never appreciated you. He got you and just put you on the shelf like a nice trophy. You are his wife. If he could, he would lock you in a glass box so that no one would look. Isn't that right?" "Stop it." Her voice trembled with anger. "He is my husband. And what? Does that justify you becoming his shadow? You were the Savannah everyone admired, which I—" He stopped, but immediately continued, not giving her the opportunity to interrupt. "And now you're just his property." Liam squinted, studying her face, then slowly, as if testing her reaction, covered her hand with his. She didn't pull her hand away. A tense silence fell between them. Their gazes met, and at that moment he took a step that he had been harboring in his head for a long time. He leaned over and kissed her. Liam's lips were soft, warm, and for a moment Savannah allowed herself to drift away. But just for a moment. The next moment she pulled away abruptly, rising to her feet. "No, Liam," her voice was firm, but there was trembling in it. "I love my husband." Liam sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Are you sure?" His voice was slightly mocking, but there was no lightness in his eyes. "Are you trying to convince me or yourself now? Because, you look like you're afraid to admit the truth." "I'm sure." She crossed her arms over her chest, as if defensively. "Ethan shouldn't know about this. Leave. You wouldn't want him to see you here." He looked at her with a long, searching gaze, then slowly stood up. "Oh, I definitely wouldn't want to. Because if he sees, he will have to admit that his perfect wife just kissed another man. And you know what's the funniest thing?" Liam grinned. "He won't even understand why this happened. Because people like him have their minds focused only on themselves." She didn't answer, just watched him leave. As the door closed behind him, Savannah ran her hand over her lips, trying to erase the sensation of his kiss. Her heart was beating too fast. Liam never liked to give in. All his life he had seen his older brother get everything: success, money, respect. Ethan now had a beautiful, devoted wife, and that was what infuriated Liam the most. Why did my brother always have everything, but he had to be content with the leftovers? No, he wasn't going to be second this time. After the night Savannah rejected his kiss, He realized he had acted too hastily. She was not a woman who could be taken by force or brute force, but it could have been different. It was possible to gain her trust, to become someone to whom she could open up. Liam decided that he would now play for the long haul. He became a friend, those to whom you can complain, to whom you can tell what is missing in your marriage. He no longer made obvious moves or tried to flirt. He listened, supported, and said the right things. "You know that I'm always on your side," he once told her when they met by chance in a cafe. "Sometimes I think you understand me better than Ethan," she sighed, twirling the spoon in her cup. Liam suppressed a pleased grin. Everything went as he wanted. He was slowly but surely eroding her trust in Ethan. He deftly fanned small doubts, forcing her to look at her husband differently. "He's always busy, right? I don't understand why he needs this marriage if he doesn't devote time to you," Liam said, and there was no open aggression in his voice, only slight regret. Savannah was protective of Ethan at first, but the more Liam gave her food for thought, the more often she found herself wondering, does Ethan really value her, or is she just another thing in his perfect order? One day, when they met again in the same cafe, Liam changed tactics. Now he was talking about himself. "You know, I've always been jealous of Ethan," he admitted, looking at her over his coffee cup. "He is so purposeful. He always achieves his goals. And it's like I've been following him all my life." "But you're successful too, Liam," Savannah countered, leaning forward slightly. "You're just different." "Yes, but I never had what he has." His gaze became piercing. "For example, a woman like you." She froze, clutching the cup in her hands. Liam immediately changed the subject as if nothing had happened, but Savannah couldn't get his words out of her head. They crawled into her mind like snakes, leaving behind a trail of doubt. Over time, Liam began to become more active. He appeared wherever Savannah was, always by chance, always to the point. One day, he offered to give her a ride after a long day at work, and she hesitantly agreed. It was quiet in the car, only muffled music and his confident voice. "You need more time for yourself," he said, looking at her briefly. "You live in the shadows, Savannah." "I see it." "You're exaggerating," she responded, but her voice was not as firm as she would like. "Just think about it," he said softly, without insisting. "You deserve better." Liam felt his power over her growing. He was in no hurry. He knew that if he did everything right, sooner or later she would break. And then his brother will lose the most valuable thing. Dorothy Drake always knew how to direct people in the direction she wanted. She didn't just observe those around her, she controlled them like chess pieces, arranging them in a way that was beneficial to her. And now her new goal was clear: Savannah. She chose the right moment when the two of them were sitting on the terrace of her mansion, enjoying evening tea. Dorothy began the conversation easily, almost casually, as if thoughts had just come to her mind. "You know how much I love Liam," she sighed, looking at the horizon. "He's kind, strong, but so lost. He doesn't have a person nearby who could help him change, become better." Savannah looked up at her, sensing a deeper meaning hidden in Dorothy's words. "He's a really good person," she answered carefully. "He's just confusing sometimes." Dorothy nodded sadly. "That's it. He needs support. Someone who can show him the right path, help him unlock his potential. You know, if he had a wise, kind woman next to him. Someone with a strong character, someone like you." Savannah felt her heart skip a beat. A strange feeling of anxiety arose in my chest. She frowned slightly. "Dorothy, you don't think that." "Oh dear," Dorothy smiled, shaking her hand. "Of course, that's not what I mean. I just think he needs an example, inspiration, in friendship with someone who can guide him in a better way." Savannah thought about it. Memories flashed through her mind, how Liam supported her, how he listened to her when Ethan was busy. She knew she shouldn't go down this path, but Dorothy's words had already crept into her mind. "Perhaps you're right," she muttered. "Liam really needs support." "Exactly, dear," Dorothy smiled softly. "I just want him to find his happiness. And who, if not you, can help him see which path is right?" Liam was showing up at their house more and more often, and this was starting to irritate Ethan. At first, these were rare visits, a cup of coffee after meeting Dorothy, a friendly dinner to which Savannah invited him. Then his presence became almost familiar. He would drop by unannounced, bring wine, laugh at old memories, joke with Savannah as if they were not just relatives, but best friends. Ethan noticed how his wife was changing. She laughed more, her mood became lighter, and Liam himself seemed to literally blossom next to her. This angered Ethan. He knew his brother too well not to understand his true motives. Him again? Ethan said coldly when he found Liam in their kitchen, pouring himself coffee. Savannah turned around with a slight smile. He just came in to chat, relax. Liam grinned, taking a sip of his coffee. You were always so serious, brother. Relax, we're just spending time. Ethan narrowed his eyes, crossing his arms over his chest. I don't like you being here so often. You're not one of those people who comes just like that. You always have a motive. Liam feigned surprise. God, Ethan, how you don't trust me. Can't I just visit my beloved daughter-in-law? You know what I mean? Ethan's voice became hard. I don't need you dragging her into your dirty deeds. Savannah frowned, her gaze darting between them. Ethan, Liam has changed. He's trying to become a better person. Why can't you give him a chance? Because I know who he is, Ethan snapped, and I know what he's capable of. Liam grinned, setting his cup down and slowly raising his hands in a conciliatory gesture. Relax, brother. I'm just a guest. But Ethan knew that a guest who stays too often one day becomes part of the house, and he couldn't allow that. The opening of Savannah's new cafe was a real event. Everything was perfect this evening. Soft candlelight, music coming from hidden speakers, happy faces of the guests. Dorothy smiled proudly, patting Savannah on the shoulder, and Henry, Ethan, and Liam's father raised a glass to her success. Even Ethan, despite his usual reserve, was pleased that his wife had fulfilled her dream. Liam was casual, but his eyes kept lingering on Savannah longer than necessary. He joked, told stories, making her laugh. She felt relaxed, for the first time in a long time, just enjoying the moment. However, the evening suddenly changed. Ethan's phone vibrated, and when he looked at the screen, his face instantly hardened. What's happened? Savannah asked worriedly. There are problems in the office, he answered briefly, raising the phone to his ear. One of our key clients refuses to sign a contract unless I sort it out personally. Savannah sighed. She knew that work always came first for him. Are you leaving? She clarified, hoping that he would find a way to stay. I need to be there. His voice was firm, as always. He quickly kissed her temple. Stay, have fun. I'll be back soon. Savannah nodded, but something inside her trembled. She watched Ethan leave the cafe, get into his car, and disappear around the corner. It's always like this, Liam noted with a slight grin, pouring her more wine. He's always at work, and you're left alone. It's his business, she said quietly, taking a sip. The taste of alcohol softened my inner anxiety a little. Of course, Liam leaned forward, his voice becoming softer, more intimate. But today is your day. You deserve attention. Savannah didn't notice how the glasses were filled again and again. Dorothy, with a gentle smile and a caring look, did not allow her to remain sober for a minute. You should celebrate today, dear, she said, pouring a little more wine. Success like this doesn't happen every day. Henry cast worried glances towards his wife. He saw that Dorothy was pouring too much wine, and he knew that Savannah had already had too much. Henry walked up to his wife, leaned over, and said quietly, Maybe that's enough already. Look, she's not feeling well. There was an alarm in his voice. However, Dorothy, without losing her calm smile, answered, It's okay, dear. She's just tired. Let her relax a little. Tomorrow she'll sleep well and be as good as new. Savannah laughed, feeling the pleasant warmth of the alcohol, but with each sip her mind became more and more foggy. Her body became light, her movements slowed down, her thoughts became confused. Everything around blurred in the soft light of candles, and the voices sounded muffled. Liam sat next to her, watching her carefully. His gaze was not friendly. He waited. I waited. When Savannah could barely hold her head up, Dorothy leaned toward Liam, her voice barely audible. "Don't miss your chance, dear," she whispered to him. "She's already ready. All you need is just to be there." Liam nodded slowly, his fingers gripping the stem of his glass. He knew what to do. He turned to Savannah and began to softly, almost unnoticed by others, compliment her. "You are so beautiful today, Savannah. This success is just the beginning of your journey. Believe me, you have a great future ahead of you." With every word he said, Savannah became more and more soft and pliable. Liam's voice sounded confident and soothing, and a pleasant shiver spread through her body. Seeing that Henry continued to worry about his daughter, Liam hastened to offer, "It's already too noisy here. Let's find a quieter place. We can continue the holiday with me. I promise everything will be fine." Savannah, drunk and barely understanding what was happening, just nodded. Henry tried to object, but Liam smiled at him as friendly as possible. "Don't worry, sir. I'll take care of her." His voice sounded smooth and inspired confidence. Henry hesitated, but Dorothy, smiling, repeated quietly again, "It's okay, dear. Let them go and get divorced." Finally, losing his guard due to his wife's persuasion, Henry gave in and allowed Liam to take Savannah away. Liam helped her up, supporting her by the elbow, and they left the hall where the celebration continued. Outside, the night wind washed Savannah's face with freshness, but everything seemed blurry and distant. Liam whispered as he pulled her into his car, "I'm nearby. You're safe with me." Savannah didn't immediately realize what was happening. Her mind was clouded by the wine, her head was a little dizzy, and Liam's voice sounded too convincing, too sweet. "You've been with one man all your life," he whispered, touching her shoulder. "Aren't you interested in knowing what it's like to feel something different, anything new?" She looked at him, her consciousness drowning in dark, bewitching eyes. Two feelings fought inside duty to Ethan and drunken, pulsating desire. I don't know," she muttered as Liam ran his hand down her neck, gently but firmly. "It's okay, Savannah." His voice was warm, enveloping. "Just trust me. Let yourself feel something real." He leaned over and kissed her. Hesitant at first, as if giving her a chance to stop it, but when she didn't pull away, the kiss became more demanding, more passionate. His hands slid around her waist, pulling her closer, and her body responded to this call. "Liam," she moaned as he slowly moved down to her collarbones, leaving hot kisses. She didn't resist. On the contrary, her body yearned for more. He undressed her slowly, enjoying every moment, whispering words in her ear that took her breath away. "You're amazing, Savannah," he whispered as their bodies tangled together. "You were created for pleasure." She moaned, arching under him, forgetting about everything. At that moment, Ethan did not exist. The past did not exist. There was only Liam, only his confident movements, his hot breath, his hands holding her tighter than her husband had ever held her. "God, it's so good," came out between her moans. Liam just grinned, knowing that she belonged to him now. He won. Savannah lay next to Liam, breathing heavily, her body still burning from the pleasure she had experienced. She closed her eyes, trying to hold on to this moment, but a strange feeling of anxiety was already arising inside. It was incredible, she whispered, sliding her fingers over his chest. "But I need to go home." Liam smiled lazily, placing his hand on her thigh. "Already?" His voice was low and satisfied. "Are you sure you want to leave? Maybe you'll stay? We can repeat." Savannah shook her head as she sat down on the edge of the bed and began gathering her clothes. She needed to get back before it was too late. So far, Ethan hasn't noticed anything. "No," she said firmly. "I have to go. I don't want him to start suspecting something." Liam watched her with a sly grin, then slowly stood up, pulling on his trousers. "Okay, I'll take you," he said, buttoning his shirt. "Don't worry, everything will be fine." But everything was far from okay. They arrived at the house late at night. The streets were deserted, Only rare streetlights cast yellow spots of light on the sidewalk. Liam turned off the engine, looked at Savannah, then leaned down and gently ran his fingers along her cheek. "Do you know that this is just the beginning?" His voice was warm, but victory was visible in his eyes. Savannah looked away, quickly opened the car door, and got out. She felt everything inside her shrinking. Conscience screamed, but the body still remembered Liam's touch. She turned towards the house and froze. Ethan stood on the porch. His figure stood out in the darkness, his arms crossed over his chest and his jaw tense. Her eyes flashed with anger when he saw her get out of her brother's car. Liam noticed him too. Slowly, without haste, he got out of the car, closed the door, and cast an indifferent glance at his brother. "What are you doing here, Liam?" Ethan's voice was quiet, but there was a sense of threat in it. "Relax, brother," Liam shrugged. "Savannah had a little too much. I just brought her home." Ethan's eyes narrowed. He stepped closer, his fists clenching. "Why were you with her?" There was a growl of rage in his voice. "Why are you hanging around my wife again?" Liam chuckled, shoving his hands into his pockets. "I just helped her." His tone was too light. "Isn't that what family is all about? Take care of each other?" It took all of Ethan's self-control not to hit his brother right there on the threshold of his own home. He glanced quickly at Savannah, but she didn't look up, standing with her head down. Something inside him broke. "Get out," he breathed, looking straight into Liam's eyes. "Right now." Liam just grinned, but backed off. "As you say, brother." He got into the car and drove away, leaving Ethan and Savannah in the oppressive silence of the night. Savannah had barely recovered from her nighttime encounter with Ethan when the doorbell rang early in the morning. She opened it and saw Dorothy on the threshold. The mother-in-law stood with perfectly styled hair, in her impeccable suit, and with a slight smile on her lips, as if she had just stopped by for coffee. "Can I come in, darling?" she asked, without waiting for an answer and going inside. Savannah closed the door, feeling her stomach tighten. Dorothy walked into the living room, looked around, and sat down in a chair, crossing her legs. Her gaze was tenacious, searching, but there was no anger or condemnation in it. "I know," she said calmly. Savannah's heart sank. "What? What are you talking about?" Her voice trembled. Dorothy tilted her head, grinning slightly. "About you and Liam. He told me everything." Savannah turned pale, clutching the back of the couch. "Dorothy, it was a mistake." "Oh, don't be so dramatic, dear," Dorothy interrupted, waving her hand. "You are a young, beautiful woman. People like you should feel welcome." Savannah looked at her with complete shock in her eyes. "Aren't you? Angry? You're not going to judge me." Dorothy laughed, taking a cigarette out of the small case and lighting it with a straight face. "Honey, I'm not a holy person. Do you think I've been Henry's devoted wife all my life?" She leaned closer. Her voice became warm, almost confidential. "At one time, I also loved to have fun. Men, they are all so serious, focused, always busy with something. And women should have fun." Savannah felt her throat go dry. This was not the conversation she expected. "But this is wrong," she whispered, although something trembled inside her. Dorothy chuckled as she flicked the ashes into a glass ashtray. "Right is just a word. The main thing is that you feel alive. Liam clearly made you feel that way. Isn't that right?" Savannah didn't know what to answer. She just watched silently as Dorothy took a drag with a satisfied smile, watching her as if she were a puppet that had just been taught to dance in a new way. Ethan was sitting in his office, deep in paperwork, when the door suddenly opened. Henry Drake walked in, uninvited, without further ado, with a serious expression on his face. He looked tense, as if he was weighing every word before saying it out loud. "We need to talk," he said, closing the door behind him. Ethan put the papers aside, looking intently at his father. "I see, the matter is urgent. What's happened?" Henry sighed heavily and sat down opposite. "Yesterday, after the party, Liam and Savannah left together. I saw it with my own eyes. Dorothy said it didn't mean anything, but there's something I don't like about all this." Ethan clenched his jaw. He already suspected that something was wrong with Liam, but hearing it from his father was another level of anxiety. "You are sure?" he asked in an even voice. "Absolutely. But that's not all." Henry leaned forward, his voice deeper. "Dorothy is acting strange. Too calm, too confident. It's like she knows something we don't." Ethan remained silent, trying to suppress the anger that was beginning to boil inside. "Do you think she has anything to do with this?" Henry smiled bitterly. "I don't think so. I know. Dorothy has always been a master manipulator. She knows how to turn people against each other. And I know her too well, Ethan." He paused, as if deciding on something important. "Because one day she betrayed me too." Urgent complaint. "What do you mean?" Henry looked down at his hands, intertwined in the lock. "She cheated on me when you were a child. I knew about this, but we decided to stay together for the sake of the children. For you and Liam. I didn't want our family to fall apart." Ethan felt his world crack. Everything he thought was stable turned out to be a lie. He took a deep breath, his fists clenching. "And now you think history is repeating itself?" Henry nodded slowly. "I'm not just thinking, Ethan. I feel it. Be careful. You could lose everything if you don't stop this now." His father's words stuck in Ethan's head, haunting him. He couldn't shake the feeling that everything Henry had warned about had a solid basis. He knew he couldn't just brush it off. He needed proof. When he returned home that night, Savannah was already asleep. The house was quiet, too quiet. He walked into the living room and stopped, looking at things that now seemed foreign to him. His home no longer felt like a safe place. He started searching. He checked their bedroom. First, his intuition told him that if there was something, it was here. He didn't know what exactly he was looking for, but he felt that he would find it. He examined the bedside table, looked into the closet, but did not find anything suspicious. Then his gaze fell on the dirty laundry basket. He slowly leaned down and looked inside. At the top were the things Savannah had worn over the past few days. He started taking them until he got to the very bottom. And there, among the folded clothes, he found evidence that turned his world upside down. These were her panties, and they showed clear signs of treason. Ethan froze, looking at the thing that in an instant became for him a confirmation of his worst nightmare. Fury boiled in my chest, my breathing became heavy. Everything he had tried to ignore now came crashing down on him with inexorable force. The next morning, Ethan didn't go to the office. Instead, he went to where he always looked for answers in difficult moments, to his father. His thoughts were confused. His chest was constricted with anger and pain. He could not stay in the house where the day before he had found evidence of betrayal. Everything there seemed false, thoroughly saturated with lies. Henry was sitting on the veranda of his house, holding a cup of coffee in his hands. He immediately realized that something had happened as soon as he saw his son's face. Ethan looked broken, his eyes were red from lack of sleep, and his lips were pressed into a thin line. "You weren't sleeping," he noted, putting the cup on the table. "You found something, right?" Ethan nodded silently and sat down opposite, clasping his fingers. His voice sounded muffled, but there was an icy determination in it. "I found evidence," he said quietly. "After the party, Savannah was with Liam. I can't doubt it anymore." Henry looked at him for a long time, then sighed heavily. He didn't look surprised, but there was sympathy mixed with fatigue in his gaze. "I hoped I was wrong," he said finally, but inside I felt that it was so. Ethan clenched his fists, trying to pull himself together. "I don't understand, Father. How could she? How could he?" There was more rage in his voice than he wanted to show. "I gave her everything, and he just took it and destroyed it. He's my brother." Henry was silent for a moment, then looked at his son intently. "I know what it's like, Ethan." His voice became firmer. "I went through it, and I'll tell you, the pain will not go away quickly. It will gnaw at you from the inside, day after day. But you must decide what you will do next. Will you leave it or go to the end?" Ethan ran his hand over his face, as if trying to shake off his fatigue. Yesterday echoed pain in his body, but it was nothing compared to what was happening in his soul. He remembered holding in his hands something that completely changed his perception of reality. An item that was once just a part of his wife's wardrobe has now become a symbol of betrayal. "Mom knew," Henry said suddenly, causing Ethan to look up at him. "When Dorothy cheated on me, she thought I would never find out. But I knew, I felt it, just like you are now." Ethan clenched his teeth, his eyes flashing with anger. "And you didn't do anything." He almost hissed it, barely containing his anger. Henry smiled bitterly, shaking his head. "I stayed. For you and Liam. I thought that I could survive this, that in time everything would be forgotten. But do you know what's the worst? It is never forgotten. It simply becomes a part of you, destroying you from the inside. If you think you can live with it, stay. If not, you need to make a decision." Ethan took a deep breath and exhaled, his chest rising and falling in rhythm with his heavy thoughts. Unlike his father, he was not ready to forgive. He was not ready to close his eyes to this. "I'll go home," he finally said, rising to his feet. "I'll talk to her. I want to hear her lies in person, and I want to see how she will get out." Ethan stopped the car in front of the house without turning off the engine. His heart beat evenly, but inside everything was tense, like a string. He didn't know what exactly he expected to see when he crossed the threshold, but his body already knew the truth. It felt like the storm was approaching. Entering inside, he immediately felt something alien in the house. It smelled different here. The air was thick and heavy. Silence. No, not quite silence. Listening, he caught muffled sounds from above. Moan. He froze, cold rage gripping his body. Step by step, he climbed the stairs. He didn't need to rush, he already knew what he would find. Every movement was given to him easily, with frightening composure. He pushed open the door to their bedroom. And I saw them. Savannah, Liam, nudes. Tangled in the sheets, their bodies glistened with sweat. There was pleasure in her eyes. Her lips whispered what was intended only for her husband. But not for him. Not for him anymore. For a moment, the room was plunged into deafening silence. Liam turned his head sharply, his face contorted in horror. Savannah gasped, her hands flying to her chest, trying to cover herself. "Ethan," she whispered, but her voice was shaking. He looked at them silently. There was no pain inside, only emptiness and icy, pure anger. "You don't want to do anything stupid." Liam tried to speak calmly, but his voice broke treacherously. Ethan didn't answer. He simply stepped forward. The first blow landed squarely on the jaw. Crunch. Liam collapsed to the floor, choking on air. Ethan grabbed him by the throat and slammed his head hard onto the floor. Again, and one more thing. "Did you sleep with my wife in my bed?" His voice was low, inhuman. Liam mumbled something, but the words were drowned in the blood flowing from his broken lip. Savannah screamed, jumping off the bed, trying to pull Ethan away, but he tossed her aside like a rag doll. "Don't touch me," he shouted at her, his eyes flashing with hatred. "You, more, not. You exist." He picked Liam up by the collar of his shirt again and threw him against the wall. He groaned, trying to get up, but his legs wouldn't obey. Ethan stepped back. He won't kill him. Not yet. He turned to Savannah, who was trembling, clutching a rumpled sheet to her chest. "Get out." Ethan's voice was as cold as steel. "Right now. You are no longer my wife. You are nothing." Savannah closed her eyes, shaking her head desperately. "Ethan, please. Out." He barked so that her shoulders trembled. She sobbed, grabbed the nearest piece of clothing, and stumbled out of the room. Liam struggled to his feet, grinning through his blood. "You've always been a cruel bastard," he croaked. Ethan spun around, ready to strike again, but stopped. It would be too easy. "You lost, Liam," he said, wiping his hands on his shirt, "and soon you will understand it." He left the room, leaving his brother writhing on the floor. Ethan drove out of his house, feeling his veins throb with rage. He couldn't stay there a second longer. Everything about Savannah and Liam disgusted him. But this was only the first act. Now he was going to ruin their lives. He drove the car towards his mother's house. Dorothy, his mother, always knew how to manipulate people, and now he understood that she was not just a witness to this betrayal, she allowed it. Perhaps she even encouraged it. When he broke into her house, Dorothy didn't even look surprised. She sat in the living room, leisurely sipping her morning tea. "Ah, Ethan," she smiled, as if everything was going according to her plan. "I was waiting for you to stop by." Ethan clenched his fists, barely keeping himself from knocking over her desk. "You vile creature," he growled, his voice filled with chilling anger. "You knew what was happening, and you let it happen. Did you know that your beloved son is having sex with my wife?" Dorothy sighed and put the cup down on the saucer. "Liam has always been different. You know it yourself." He couldn't resist the temptation. Ethan slammed his fist onto the table, making her flinch. "Do not resist temptation," he barked. "You mean it's not his fault? Or do you also think that Savannah deserved more than me?" Dorothy looked at him with mock sympathy. "Ethan, you are too strong, too cold-blooded. Women need emotions. You still don't understand this." He chuckled, shaking his head. "Then look, Mother." His voice sounded dangerously even. "I will show you all what emotions happen when you betray me." He turned around and headed towards the exit. This was just the first stop. Savannah and Liam were in front. They had no idea what awaited them next. It's been a few days since Ethan caught Liam with Savannah, but his rage did not subside. It only grew into a cold-blooded, methodical thirst for revenge. He knew that if he hit correctly, he would destroy his brother's life just as he had destroyed his. The first step was Liam's work. He was not an outstanding specialist and kept his position only thanks to his connections. And connections are something Ethan has always been stronger at. He met the right people. A couple of calls, several friendly conversations with the management of the company where Liam worked, and a day later his brother received notice of dismissal. "Sorry, but we have to cut your department," the boss told him without looking up. "This is nonsense." Liam flared up. "I know who is behind this," but no one listened. He no longer existed in the corporate world. The next step was complete financial collapse. Liam lived large without thinking about tomorrow. He took out loans and squandered money without thinking about the consequences. Ethan only pushed him into the abyss. Using his connections at the bank, he ensured that Liam's loans became unaffordable. All concessions disappeared, interest rates skyrocketed, and accounts were frozen. A few days later, Liam discovered that his credit cards were blocked. The landlord demanded payment, but he had no more money. What the hell? Liam paced around his apartment, looking at debt notices. "It's Ethan. I know it's him, but he couldn't do anything. He lost his job. He lost money." Ethan knew this was only the beginning of his downfall. Ethan sat in his office, looking at the glass of whiskey that he slowly swirled in his hand. Liam lost. Jobs are lost. Money is gone. Now he is just a shadow of that self-confident scoundrel who thought that he could betray his brother with impunity. Ethan picked up the phone and dialed the number. "Liam," his voice was cold. "You're finished. You lost. You have one chance. Disappear. Get out of the city, out of the country, out of my life. I don't want to hear your name anymore." A heavy, ragged breath was heard at the other end of the tube. Liam was broken. "Ethan, listen. I was an idiot." His voice trembled. "You don't understand. I have nowhere to go." "It's not my problem," Ethan snapped. "Disappear before I make it so you have nowhere to run." Liam fell silent. For several seconds, all that was heard was his nervous breathing. Then the line went dead. Liam tried to find a way out, but every day his situation became worse. The creditors no longer called. They came to him in person. Two men in expensive suits were waiting for him at the exit from the apartment. "You seem to owe us something, friend." One of them tapped Liam on the shoulder with a grin. "We don't like it when people forget to pay." Liam backed away, but the other one grabbed his arm. I will find the money. Give me some more time." Liam's voice was full of panic. "Time?" The man grinned. "Your time is up." He felt a fist slam into his stomach, knocking out the air. Liam doubled over, clutching the wall. Ethan sat in the dimness of his office, sipping whiskey and watching his laptop screen. Liam was on the screen, pathetic, lost, scared. He did not even suspect that his last steps had long been predicted and directed to a place from which there is no return. This move was simple. Liam was on the verge of despair, ready to grab any opportunity to get out of the hole. Ethan gave him exactly what he was looking for: a quick way to make money. One call, one hint, and Liam himself jumped into the trap. All you need to do is hand over the money. A couple of hours of work, and you will cover at least part of the debts, said a casual acquaintance sent by Ethan. Everything is clean, you just pick up the bag, take it to the appointed place, and get paid. All. Liam was clutching at straws. He didn't even think that the money was dirty, and the people to whom he transferred it did not tolerate mistakes. He didn't ask any questions. He just took his bag and went. But at the meeting point, they were already waiting for him. Not with money, with weapons. Do you think they can cheat us? The voice of one of the men was cold, dispassionate. Where is the rest of the money? What amount? They just gave me a bag and told me to bring it. Liam's voice trembled. So you robbed us? The man pulled out a gun, pressing the barrel on Liam's chest. No, I just... He paused, realizing there was no way out. They didn't kill him. For now, they gave him time. 3 days to get back the money he never had. Ethan found Liam 2 days later, in an alley, dirty, beaten, with a swollen eye and blood on his lips. He didn't just look broken, he was broken. Brother, Liam muttered hoarsely, raising his shaking hands. Help. Ethan slowly crouched down in front of him, looking into his swollen face. He enjoyed this moment. Help? His voice was cold, like metal. Are you asking me to help you? After what you did? Liam groaned, lowering his head. They will kill me. Probably yes, Ethan agreed calmly. At that moment, footsteps were heard from behind. Dorothy. She looked worried, her hands were shaking. Ethan, please. Her voice was almost pleading. This is your brother. You have already punished him enough. Leave him alone. Ethan stood up slowly, wiping his hands on a handkerchief. Enough? He looked at his mother with an icy smile. Do you think that's enough for what he did because you supported him? He is your blood, she shouted. He was mistaken, but he repents. Ethan slowly leaned toward Liam, his voice quiet but firm. Repentance does not cancel the consequences. Liam looked up, his eyes swollen and filled with fear. Ethan. Get lost, Liam. His voice was quiet, but full of power. Disappear before they find you. I won't raise my hand to save you. He turned and walked away, leaving the mother kneeling next to the son she had been so protective of. Now Liam was alone. Ethan made his move, and he didn't lose. Savannah sat in her rented room, tasteless and empty, which smelled of mold and other people's destinies. She lost. Liam disappeared, leaving her with nothing. There was no money left, no friends. Her dream, her life, everything turned into ruins. And there was only one person she could go to. One person who could save her. She stood on the threshold of his house, wet from the rain, wearing a cheap coat that had once belonged to her in another life. She knocked with trembling hands. The door opened, and he, her ex-husband, stood in front of her. Ethan. He looked at her with a cold, almost indifferent expression, but dark, hidden hatred burned in his eyes. Why are you here? His voice was icy, saturated with contempt. Savannah sobbed and took a step forward, clenching her hands in supplication. Ethan, please. I have nowhere else to go. He grinned, shaking his head. Have you come to see me? After everything? His voice was full of poison. Who needs you now, Savannah? Liam? Oh, that's right. He ran away, leaving you in the shit in which you should have drowned. Please. Her voice was broken, barely audible. I made a mistake. I was stupid. Ethan laughed mockingly, crossing his arms over his chest. A mistake? You? He narrowed his eyes, stepping closer. You were a cheap bitch who decided she could play at love. You traded me for my brother. And now, when he wiped his feet on you, you crawled to me like the last beggar. Savannah trembled, not from the cold, but from the pain his words caused. I, I'm ready to fix everything. I'll do whatever you say. She looked up at him, like a trapped animal, and her voice trembled with despair. Ethan tilted his head to the side contemptuously, looking at her. He grinned. Well, interesting. So now you want to be a submissive wife? Oh yes, but you are no longer a wife. You are nobody. You are the dirt under my shoes. He stepped back, looking at her as if she were trash that had been accidentally brought into the house. Get out, he said coldly. I hate even to look at you. Savannah sobbed, her fingers clenching at the collar of her coat. Ethan. He slammed the door in her face. Ethan wasted no time. That same day, as Savannah humiliated begged for his forgiveness, he contacted top lawyers and filed for divorce. No scandals, no discussions. Simply drawn-up papers where her name was listed only as an empty formality. He knew that legally she had no chance. Everything that she considered hers had always belonged to him. Savannah sat at an old wooden table in a tiny rented apartment, staring at sheets of paper with a court seal. Divorce. Everything was official. She no longer had the right to even approach the house where she once lived. The cafe, her only pride, also no longer belonged to her. Just like the car, like her bank account, which was emptied as soon as she tried to withdraw anything from it. Ethan took everything, until the last cent. He left her no trace of her former life, erasing her existence just as she had erased his trust. The apartment in which she now lived was a pitiful semblance of a home. Shabby walls, thin cheap curtains, gray linoleum on the floor. She barely had enough money for rent, and every day she woke up wondering how she would even survive. Passing by the mirror, she stopped and looked at herself. Dull skin, sunken cheeks, empty eyes. Where was the confident woman she once was? She no longer existed. Savannah fell to her knees, running her fingers through her hair. It's over. She has nothing left. No money, no status, no love. 3 years have passed. 3 long, happy years during which Ethan erased the past and built a new life. Now he had a loving wife who did not betray him, and a little daughter whose ringing laughter was the best music in his world. They walked through the park, holding hands, enjoying the warm sun and tranquility. Ethan carried his daughter on his shoulders as his wife, Emily, laughed as the little girl clapped her hands excitedly. At this moment, he did not have a shadow of regret. Everything he's been through has led him to this life. He never looked back. But then he saw her. A woman was sitting on one of the benches, away from the noisy family areas. Thin, in dirty, tattered clothes, with disheveled hair. She seemed like a ghost from the past, a shadow of who she once was. Savannah. She sat with her arms wrapped around herself, as if trying to keep warm. Her gaze was dull, lifeless. She didn't even notice him right away. It seemed as if the whole world had ceased to exist for her. Ethan stopped. His heart did not waver. He looked at her without pity, without anger, only with cold indifference. Savannah raised her head, and their eyes met. For a second, hope flashed in her eyes, but then faded away, giving way to shame. She looked away, realizing that standing in front of her was the man whom she had betrayed and who had now turned into nothing. Emily gently pulled on her husband's hand. "Everything is fine?" she asked, not knowing who he was looking at. Ethan smiled at her and kissed her temple. "Yes," he said calmly, "everything is fine." The next morning, leaving the house, Ethan froze in the doorway. Savannah stood in front of him, head down. Still the same thing, tired, but now there was no despair in her eyes, only quiet humility. "I don't want to interfere," she whispered, without looking up. I need to tell you something." Ethan crossed his arms over his chest, but did not interrupt her. He waited. "I'm happy for you." She finally looked at him, and her eyes no longer had the arrogant confidence that they once had. "You have a real family now. You're happy, and that's right. I ruined everything. I've lost everything, but I don't blame anyone but myself." Ethan looked at her silently. He didn't need to hear an apology. He had long ago accepted what happened. "I'm not asking you to come back, I'm not asking you for anything." Her voice trembled. "I just wanted to say that I'm grateful to you for the fact that you were once there." Several long seconds of silence passed. Ethan then sighed heavily and nodded. "Do you still want to work?" he asked unexpectedly. Savannah blinked, not understanding what he meant. Yes, of course." She nodded quickly. "But then come to the Giuliano restaurant. I'll arrange for you to be hired as a waitress," he said evenly. Savannah shook her head, not believing her ears. "Are you serious? After everything?" Ethan looked at her calmly. "Sometimes people need a second chance, but only if they are ready to work on themselves." Several months have passed. Savannah worked without complaining, without expecting special treatment. She humbly started from scratch, learning to earn money by honest work again. And when Ethan saw that she had really changed, he helped her open her own small cafe. Without unnecessary words, without ostentatious gestures, just like a person who once knew her best. The past cannot be returned, but forgiveness is possible. Ethan understood this, and now, finally, he could move on without looking back. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think, click to the next one.